بعد ما أعلن نائب رئيس وزراء لبنان سعادة الشامي عن إفلاس لبنان ومصرف لبنان. علق مصدر حكومي إن التصريح
Welcome again to Business is Personal. On this episode, I'm so excited to have John Sanai, international speaker and author of best-selling books like What's Your Moonshot and Future Next. I'm just really excited to share this conversation with you because we are going to be talking all about personal transformation. We'll talk about mental healing, and we're going to talk about what the future looks like. Oh, also, don't forget to follow me on LinkedIn. Do you feel disconnected at work? Are you feeling exhausted? Almost like you hate your job and secretly, maybe your boss too? This is Business is Personal, a blueprint to discovering and creating meaning at work in collaboration with Smashy TV, a live streaming service in the Middle East for the driven, the dreamers, and the doers. All right, I am so excited to be talking with John Sanai, who's like one of the most interesting people I've ever met. I don't know if well, I certainly remember. It was a few weeks ago that we actually met for the first time.
Yes.
And we had the most amazing coffee. We sat in this restaurant at the hotel where you were staying at.
That's right.
And we just talked for like an hour, hour and a half maybe.
Yeah.
And at the end, we were so engrossed in the conversation, I kid you not, I forgot to take a selfie. And that's exactly how it went. I think that's exactly how it should have gone. So I'm really excited to have you
Thank you
on
for having
Business
me.
is Personal. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Yeah, listen, why don't you tell all of our friends out there who you are and what you're about.
Well, my name's John Sanai. I'm incredibly fascinated with human beings and the future.
Okay, brilliant.
And so really it's about understanding how we need to evolve into the future.
Right.
And I write books, I do talks, I do strategy sessions, and I have a podcast. And it's always about this idea of exploring more ways to grow, both mentally and emotionally, and prepare for the future.
Well, you're best known for What's Your Moonshot, right?
That's right.
And that was the one that like skyrocketed you.
That's right.
That's how you transformed.
That's right. Yeah.
That book end up, I think, became your moonshot.
It's weird, it did, eh?
It is, right?
Exactly.
It's
the
like,
title itself actually preempted what the book would do itself.
It became a self-fulfilling prophecy.
That's right.
Which is
That's
really
right.
cool. It
Yes.
was really neat to watch that. I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about personal transformation.
Of course.
Because that's your forte. We'll talk a little bit about, I think, future of work later, but I want to talk about personal transformation. So there's so many people out there that look at you, they look at me, they look at other personal brands, and they're like, oh man, I want to do that. I want to be like that. What were the things that surprised you along the way that led to where you are now?
I think what catalyzed this process of self-development for myself was bankruptcy.
My goodness, that's so good. Okay, carry on. No, me too.
You're so excited about my bankruptcy, you too?
It's exactly the same. Like this is, and it's not even that long ago, right? Like my company went down, it folded very suddenly.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with me personally, right? So I was like, oh my goodness, but business is personal. So suddenly I was, all of my investments gone.
Right.
So I hit bankruptcy, and then I was like, oh man, what do? You find your pillow and then you get back to work, right?
Right.
And that's how it was for you?
Well, look, I often comment that I had two bankruptcies. I had an emotional bankruptcy and a financial bankruptcy.
Okay, brilliant.
And so at 30 was a financial bankruptcy, at 40 was an emotional bankruptcy when I got divorced.
Right.
So both of these really catalyzed me to dig deeper into who I am, what had created the pattern for me to fall into this trap almost, that I'd created myself.
Right.
And so both of these catalyzed me to dig deeper, evolve myself. And then through the process of evolving myself, I became quite a specialist in the topic just because of my own fascination with it. And so I think that's what I do now.
The most surprising part of my experience when I went bankrupt is that I survived.
Yeah.
Right? Like you think, oh my God, the floor gets kicked out from under you. And for those of you who have ever been bankrupt or afraid of experiencing bankruptcy, don't worry, it's survivable. I think that's that was for me the most shocking thing is like, I'm still here.
Yeah. I think that once you get up on the other side and you realize that you're still there, you become more powerful than ever before. Yeah. Because now all of a sudden there's nothing to be scared of.
That's right.
You're like, I went there, I did, was that it? It was much worse in my head than actually in real life.
I could totally do that again. Not that I want to.
No. Hold back.
So we have similar stories that way in that I've been bankrupt before, I've been divorced, I'm remarried now, but I know exactly what you mean by that emotional bankruptcy of divorce. My first wife and I, we got married when we were 20. Yeah. And we were married for 22 years. We were like absolute lifelong sweethearts. And it fell apart very amicably, which is nice. Yes. It's a rare kind of story. Yes. And even knowing how it would end, I would live that adventure again if I had the choice, right?
Yes,
so if I had the choice to go back and do it again, I would. But I know exactly what you mean by getting to the end of something deeply personal like that, and then you end up with that emotional bankruptcy, and you think there's nothing more that I can give. I don't have any more energy left.
Yes, absolutely. And I think these painful processes are really important for us to alchemize who we are and what we're about.
I totally
think
agree.
the trick is to figure out how quickly to heal from them.
Right.
Because some people can get stuck for years, and in fact can even become part of their identities moving forward.
Right.
And so for me, it's about trying to figure out what can fast track your recalibration. So how quickly can you go through the process of the 5 stages of mourning, you know, the denial, anger, bargaining, grief, acceptance, like just get to acceptance as quickly as possible. So the process of healing myself physically, mentally, and emotionally has now become my work. And this is what I help people understand as a tool set.
Yeah. No, I love that you bring in the 5 stages, because I don't think you can skip a stage. No, I tried to skip stages.
No,
it doesn't work. You have to go back, do the work.
That's right.
You get through it. But, you know, I have found it became a best practice of mine with my hardest experiences then to put a date on my morning. Say, look, you're allowed to be sad. You're allowed to be utterly depressed. You can totally waste 1 week. That's it. On like Friday at 5 p.m., your morning week is done. Saturday morning, you get up and get back to work. Because it needs to be done. You have to live still.
Sure.
So I think for me to put a date on my morning I kind of stumbled into that as a best practice. And now whether I'm having an off day or a really bad year, I always put a date on it. I'm like, you know what? If I
have this much time.
Yeah, even if I have like just an off day, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be grumpy for the next 40 minutes. At 10 o'clock, I'm going to stop being grumpy. That's it. You know, I'm going to get back to work.
So, well, that's a very powerful process to do. I wish I had that same gutso, but I like to allow pockets of like ease and then to go back into it, because I think these things aren't linear. I think they're quite complex in their process of going on about it, you know. But I think what COVID-19 also did for many people is it's postponed or canceled their future memories. And what has happened is that people haven't really mourned the loss of their future dreams that they had.
I love that.
And I think that's also a very important thing to do, is not only mourn the loss of the past, but also maybe the loss of the future. And so that's also important to keep an eye on.
Well, it's the same. Like when you go bankrupt, when you get divorced, you have to mourn a vision. Right? Because you have this idea of the way your life should have been. And if you hang on to the idea of what should have been,
you'll be bitter.
You'll be angry and resentful, and so you have to let go of that. You have to mourn that, and sometimes that is just as difficult as mourning a catastrophic loss, like the death of a family member. Because we hold on to these dreams so much, and we've all got dreams for our lives, right? But I love what you said about what you call it, future memories. Mourning your future memories. That is so powerful.
And the thing for me is that we often don't courageously mourn. We avoid the mourning stage. We don't want to be sad. We don't want to be upset. We don't want to be sobbing. But the truth is that 2 things. 1, there's no post-traumatic growth if you don't mourn courageously. And 2, there's a great line from Dr. Caroline Leaf. She says, "I sat with my anger long enough until she told me her name was grief."
Oh, wow.
And so the thing is that if you're not mourning the grief, it shows up as anger. And if you're not mourning the grief, you're not able to move on to the next stage of healing. And so it's really important to actually sit with that mourning and sadness.
I love I was listening to an episode of the Psychology podcast. I don't know if you listened to it at all, but they were talking all about post-traumatic growth. And there's so much new research going on right now in terms of measuring that, because we have a lot of understanding of post-traumatic stress and post-traumatic grief and post-traumatic scarring, emotional and physical, but we don't have a lot of understanding of what the triggers are or the character traits that lead people into real post-traumatic growth. And that's a real thing, right? You've lived it, I've lived it. I've become so much I'm probably stronger than my vision of myself was prior to my trauma.
I'm sure, of course. Yes, of course.
Would you say the same?
Absolutely. Because that sort of pain definitely catalyzes you to become more of who you're supposed to be.
And so, like you said, when you realize you can survive it, it's like, oh, well, that's not bad.
Well, look, what's wisdom? healed pain.
Right.
And so when you're able to heal that pain, you really grow forward, being more empathetic.
Yeah.
And in that space of empathy, you're much more fluid in your approach.
Right, but you have to start with being empathetic with yourself.
Of course.
Right, because we tend to look in the mirror and you go, oh, smarten up, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're better than this, you're stronger than this, and you're yelling at yourself in the mirror, but it's you you're yelling at, and
Absolutely.
it's you that's yelling at you.
Yeah.
So you end up abusing yourself every day until you can like slap yourself into, what do you, no, you need some empathy for yourself and what you've been going through, and you say, you know what, this has been a hard time.
Yeah.
It's been a really hard time.
Yeah.
Let's acknowledge that. Let's accept the fact that it's hard. Let's mourn the vision of what might have been.
Yeah.
That's no longer going to be.
Exactly.
And now let's design something new.
Right.
We can design a new you, a new future, a vision of yourself that you hadn't possibly dreamed before.
Absolutely.
And now you're there with your life. I know I'm there with my life. Right. What would you say that if people are like, if you're really stuck right now, you want wisdom, right? Which is healed pain, which we have. What wisdom would you give to those that are really hurting right now and feeling stuck and yelling at themselves and judging themselves in the mirror like every day?
Seek help.
Okay,
there's so much help out there. And I think often what we do is we look to physical training as somebody that we're spending money on to go to the gym, to get a personal trainer, to get a nutritionist. Right. But when it comes to emotional healing, we don't have a clue of who we should be seeing, what we should be doing.
That's true.
And so for me, the seeking of help to heal your heart, your memories, your physical body that's containing all the memory of your emotional states, and to learn how to think again. Because sometimes our thinking gets clogged up.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
There's different coaches, different specialists for each one of these sections, right? So for me, are you doing Reiki? Are you doing body talk to be able to move the cellular structure? Are you doing family constellations or anything like that to heal your heart and heal the past? And are you seeing a coach that is a mental sort of like a high performance mental coach that helps you think about things differently? Yeah, that's so the advice is seek help. And categorize the help into mental healing, emotional healing, and physical healing.
No, I love that. You know, it never ceases to amaze me how much humans think they're in this alone.
Yes.
Right? How much our default is to say, oh, it's all up to me, and you know, everybody's judging me, and I'm also judging me, and if I don't do this, then nothing's going to happen, and we're in it alone. When in fact, we can't even get through our day without interacting with 1,000 other lives, right? From the person who pick the beans for your coffee to the person that put gas in your car. Like your life will intersect with so many other humans today. Right. We've never survived a single day of our lives alone.
Well, you know, the thing is it's actually the most selfish thing to do, that to think that it's always about you.
Yeah,
right. It's like the deepest, most selfish thing. It's like, it's not about you. Like everybody's going through this, you know? So it's also good to get out there and be vulnerable and to have a community that you can talk to things about, you know? Because everybody's going through something, and to be able to share the pain, you really help to connect with each other in a much deeper space.
Yeah, I totally agree. You know, we've gone through such a transformation. I think, look, if I can make this gendered just for a little bit, I think the transformation in definition for be a man, you know, we used to, you know, you've heard that, right? Be a man, grow up, be a man. And we have definitions of that, but nobody says be a woman. Okay, because
you're right.
Because we don't have a definition for that. Everybody knows women are fine that way. Emotionally, they can deal with themselves. But be a man, typically the definition of that is stop whining, stop crying.
That's right.
Stop being vulnerable, stop being emotive, stop being real with yourself and with others. And it hasn't served us well. No. And so we need new levels of acceptance for what emotional vulnerability and transparency mean for men. We don't have. My dad never had these conversations. Yeah. Right?
Look, I don't think they knew how.
Right.
I think that the software our parents had was an iOS 5 software. They really just didn't have the capacity. And even today, when you speak to people who are 70, 80, sometimes they just don't have the capacity to understand these things, ask the questions that are so deep. And it really becomes our responsibility to help them and the generations below us so that they don't carry the lessons that our fathers didn't heal. Right. And so it really becomes our responsibility to do that. But, you know, it's not just the patriarchy that's taking so much strain. I think on every level, we have a crisis of meaning at the moment, you know.
Yeah.
So if you think about education, it used to guarantee you something.
Right.
The dollar used to stand for something.
Right.
Political integrity used to be something.
That's right.
And the patriarchy used to stand for power. And all of these things are starting to implode around us.
It's true.
And it's important for them to implode because we have a very exciting 2030s that are coming for us. And
Agreed.
really, it's a renaissance that we're moving towards. And I think it's important that we prepare for this renaissance.
So tell me then, how would you recommend people start to search for, I'm a big fan of meaning at work, right? My thesis is really, I just want, if you're going to spend half of your life doing something every day, it should be a meaningful half. Okay, it doesn't matter what it is, right? And if work is half of your life, then it should be meaningful.
Absolutely.
So I want to get us to the place where we're constantly pursuing as much meaning as we can with the work that we're doing, because that's how we contribute to the world. So what does that work look like in the 2030s? People are freaking out. Artificial intelligence and blockchain is changing everything, and the socio-political situation is just chaos. Social media is chaos. What are we looking at?
500 years ago, the most important thing we could do as human beings was have a strong body. And that body would give us an opportunity to be agriculturally, have a prowess in agriculture, because you needed to work in the field 16 hours a day to feed yourself and the family.
Right.
Then about 200 years ago, factories replaced our bodies and the Industrial Revolution began. And what we had to do is build a new skill. And the new skill was IQ, left brain, process-driven thinking. And for 200 years, work and education and corporations have all been about process-driven IQ. And so it's really done well for us. But as we start evolving into quantum futures, AI and data and blockchain will replace our intelligence. And so we can't compete with the intelligence process. And so when people are freaking out, they're freaking out because they're not evolving. They're holding on to old identities and old skill sets. Just like imagine the people in the agricultural times trying to fight tractors and factories. It's impossible. You just can't. And so, you know, the Luddites, very famous, they went around burning factories and tractors and that sort of thing, which is kind of what people are doing right now, freaking out about AI. Well, evolve. So what does evolve look like? And so when all the rudimentary basics of our lives are taken care of, utilizing data and AI, like Google Maps, like Spotify, these things are already creeping into our lives. Soon they'll be choosing for us what to eat, who to marry, all these things. And I don't see it as a bad thing, because you love the fact that Google Maps told you not to go this way, but to go that way, because there was a traffic jam there.
That's right.
You're like, thank goodness for that, right?
It's more intelligent than we are because it can see things we can't see.
It's got a certain type of intelligence that we don't have, right?
That's right.
I wouldn't say it's more intelligent. It's
a narrow intelligence.
It's a narrow intelligence.
Yes,
exactly. So the new skill that we're moving into is much more about intuition. And so if we think about what intuition is, it's quite a complex process, because one, we've never been taught it. Two, we often think it's for hippies. Three, it doesn't make any sense in the Western world of business. But the truth is, as we move into the creator economy, as we move away from the fact that we need corporations and managers and systems and processes around us to actually make a living, we start to realize that the currency, the most important currency that you'll have, is your uniqueness, your genius. And when you can tap into that, you start to be able to become totally collaborative, expansive, and really start to add value to a world in a very different way. So what is intuition? Intuition is made up of four things in my perspective. The first thing is wisdom. And wisdom is best described by Alan Watts. He says, the knowledgeable man has to learn something new every day, but the wise man has to unlearn something new every day. It's in the healing of the trauma. Dr. Joe Dispenza calls it, wisdom is memories with no triggers. So you're healed of your past. That's wise. Because when you say intuition, often people will say it's gut feel, right? But gut feel's tainted by bad memories. It's actually not true. So the second part of intuition is curiosity, fascination, and excitement.
I love that. Curiosity is one of my 5 core values.
That's right. And so if you think about school, they never ask you to be curious. And if you think about organizations, it's about sticking to a plan that's about efficiencies and economies of scale and profitability, not curiosity. There's no time for curiosity. Go home on your weekend and be curious. The third part is experimentation, because what you want to do is you want to bring in the physicality of what you're working on, rather than just keeping a theory. And the last one is imagination. And the reason that I say imagination is because the society we've created is addicted to certainty, not imagination. And so when you're addicted to certainty, you can't imagine. You've got a process to follow. And so if you combine healing your past, making decisions with your heart, which is curiosity, imagining what the possibilities of the future are, and experimenting with no addiction to certainty, you become a sixth sense human being. And in the
much
sixth
more
sense,
agile, right?
agility, optimism, flexibility
Right.
become obvious.
Yes.
Because now you're in economies of learning, not economies of scale.
Right.
And now the system changes. And so what we have to start doing is, one, healing our past, and two, start making decisions what makes you most happy
Right.
and curious and excited. So what you're saying is, if you spend so much time at work, what's the most important thing for you to do? Is be happy.
Yeah.
When you're happy, then everything will flow from that.
I think we've had this discussion before, that happiness is a distraction from fulfillment.
I love that line. Yes.
So I truly believe this. If you want to be happy, go get a Big Mac, right? Any combination of sugar, fat, and salt is going to give you that kick of dopamine.
Right.
That's the way humans are happy.
Right.
But most of the things, it's probably the same for
beautiful.
you.
You're right.
Most of the things that I've really valued in my life, right? Writing PhDs, writing books, having kids, they're hard. They're hard like 85% of the time.
Lovely.
Okay?
You're
So
right.
all of the really fulfilling things require a focused
Some
lack
challenge.
a focused lack of happiness. Let's
Right.
put it that way, right?
Right.
Because I'm not happy
Right.
when I'm running a 25-kilometer Spartan race or whatever it is. Good deal of that, I'm not happy.
Right.
But I'm doing it because it's effortful, and what makes it valuable, what makes it fulfilling, is the
Right.
fact that it's effortful, and I'm willing to discipline myself, even though doesn't
like
make
that.
me happy in the moment.
Good. Fulfillment. Very much more powerful.
Yeah.
Seems much more deep.
Right, but
Yes.
what you're talking about in terms of intuition and uniqueness and creativity, it seems like the evolution is from physical prowess prior to mental prowess, now
emotional.
to like emotional, maybe even spiritual prowess,
Yes,
right?
of course.
So we'll have a kind of spiritual intelligence.
Absolutely.
I've done a lot of writing on spirituality and management, and
Right.
it's not religious, right? But
Yes.
spirituality and management is kind of that attachment of meaning.
Yes.
Finding the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs
Yes.
while you're at work. I think that
Yes.
we have a lot more work to do on that, and I totally agree with you. What I'm concerned about, I think, is with artificial intelligence and data, everything, the currencies being data-driven currencies now. I am concerned that we'll end up commoditizing uniqueness.
Right.
And we'll take, because you're obviously creating data every day that belongs only to you, and your uniqueness to an organization is the data that you create,
Yes.
and you have a data fingerprint,
Yes.
right? Then we're going to commoditize that. So we're encouraging people to be unique, but then on the back of that, there's the commoditization of uniqueness that allows us.
I agree with you, but for me, is like, when you're thinking about that new paradigm that's coming, we're coming at it from a space of not understanding all the other changes that would have come by then. So if I ask you this, is that in 1995, if I told you that soon you'll be able to take as many photos as you want and share them as many places as you want, as often as you like, you would never understand how that would be possible even.
Right.
And if you think about, if I told you in 2005 that all communication in the future will be free, and you'd be like, how? I'm paying so much money to the AT&Ts of the world right now. It doesn't make sense that. And so the next phase for us is going to be free transportation. And people think, well, how? I'm already paying so much money for my car, and it's such an important part of my life. But just like the other things became obvious.
Right.
And I also think that from this perspective, that is scary.
Right.
But I don't know what would be happening by 2030. What are the rules? What would have changed in our consciousness?
Yeah.
And I'd like to be optimistic on the way there.
Yeah.
Because if I am wrong, I had a good time for 7 years.
Right.
And if I was right with being worried, I'm just worried for 7 years. And then it goes, oh, I told you so, but I've been worried for 7 years about it. So,
that's right.
So I'd like to stay optimistic until it's too late, maybe. Until the shark eats me,
Oh, I just had a dark vision of a 14-hour flight from Dubai to Seattle, where they say it's absolutely free. You get on the flight, you can fly for free from Dubai to Seattle. But if you want the flight to be ad-free,
oh my God,
then here's the price of an ad-free flight. Otherwise, you spend 14 hours watching commercials.
Ads.
Yeah, exactly right.
Wasn't it a Black Mirror?
That sounds like a Black Mirror episode to me.
Yeah, that's
that
shocking.
is the most horrible future I can imagine. Is 14.
Oh. Please God, not for us.
Right?
Yeah, please God.
Oh no.
But look, I think what we have to realize is I call myself a futures strategist on purpose, as a plural future.
Right.
And I think that we all have the opportunity to develop our own futures.
Right.
And there's always a duality of reality. And some people are having a horrific time here on Earth, and other people are having a blissful time.
Right.
It's exactly the same experience.
Right.
And I think it really depends on our consciousness level, our vibrational level, our perspective.
Yeah.
So hopefully I'm not on a plane with ads ever.
No, it's true. Me too. And I think we need to be very flexible in our expectations now. We've learned, I think, through COVID, through that experience, that our level of expectations is always going to be subject to change.
Yes.
Right? And you might expect your life to go like this. You might expect, the world to go like, we have this kind of dichotomy where we think my life is going to go great. And yet we have this apocalyptic view of the world. Right? So there's some cognitive dissonance there where we expect the entire world to be apocalyptic and yet my life to be amazing.
Well, I don't think it's going to be apocalyptic. Again, I don't want to have that as an option even of what I'm moving towards.
Right.
But just like you've just described, we have an addiction to certainty.
Right.
And what COVID-19 did for us is that there is no certainty.
That's right.
We only have uncertainty. And so when you can't predict where you're going, the only thing you can manage is your behavior.
Right.
And so it's all about your behavior management, because whatever gets thrown at you, how quickly can you process and recalibrate?
That's right.
And that becomes your skill for the future.
Well, that's like riding a bike, right? It's momentum. Momentum keeps you off the ground.
That's right.
You only have to fall down a couple of times and skin your knee a couple of times to realize that you really need to be moving.
Yes.
In order to
constantly.
You have to be constantly moving.
Exactly.
You have to be ready to shift. And if you're constantly moving, constantly developing, constantly learning, like you said, and constantly ready to shift, then whatever happens in your view of the future won't matter. Yeah,
exactly.
So then you have a much better chance of creating or curating your future.
Well, that's why it's important for us to develop intuition, because it gives you adaptability.
That's right.
Well, logical thinking needs certain outcomes.
Right.
And we have this thing, I think it's from Stanford, it says we have a dopamine prediction reward error inside our heads.
Right.
And what it means is that when your kids are writing exams, what we do is we don't celebrate the studying, the effort. What we do is we celebrate the A.
Right.
And so now what that says is that for the effort, don't give yourself dopamine.
Right.
For the outcome, if you get it, you can celebrate. And if you don't, if you get a B, oh, sorry, that wasn't that great. So what we have to do is that's a reward prediction error.
Right.
And so that's based on a world of certainty, of linear innovation through industrial revolution.
If you do A plus B,
you get to celebrate.
That's right.
Whereas in a time of uncertainty, the only thing you can celebrate is effort.
Right.
And so what we need to celebrate what we're doing.
I love that.
And it's in the effort that we can get more dopamine.
Love that. Tell me, like in your life, because you get to travel, speak, you're an author, we spend time on stages. I know what gives my life meaning. Tell me what gives your life, what do you find most meaningful about your work?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. It's such a great question. Is watching an audience member, whenever you get up on stage, you have 25% of the audience that are just pessimistic people.
Yes,
just in general. It's not about me. It's just the way they are, right? and I don't take it to heart anymore. I just understand that they're just like that.
Yes.
To watch them switch. And for me, that's just such a wonderful process, because they give themselves an opportunity to imagine a better future than when they walked into the hall before I spoke with them.
Yeah.
And for me, ultimately, it's about the responsibility and choice we have for the future. And again, some people think that it's just going to be a terrible future. And for me, so when I see that turn and that shift in their eyes, and it's really them waking up to a new potential.
Right.
And so for me, that by far the most interesting and almost goosebump giving scenario for me when I'm on stage and I see those eyes pop. And as they pop, I know why I'm here on earth.
Yes, I totally agree with you. 10% are you going to love me, 10% of you are going to hate me. The other 80% are going to come away with one idea.
You're right.
One idea is going to change that world.
Right, exactly. It's wonderful. I mean, we really are lucky to be able to move around the world and tell stories.
It's true.
I mean, look at us.
It's true, right? How fun is this? How fun is this? How fun is this? Right? Thank you so much for being with me on the show today. Thank you for this conversation, John. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Do you feel disconnected at work? Are you feeling exhausted? Almost like you hate your job and secretly maybe your boss too? This is Business is Personal, a blueprint to discovering and creating meaning at work in collaboration with Smashy TV, a live streaming service in the Middle East for the driven, the dreamers, and the doers.
التصريح ده نابع من مفاوضات مع صندوق النقد الدولي وطلب لبنان لمساعدته، فبالتالي التصريح ده مش إعلان رسمي لإفلاس لبنان. كمان صرح حاكم مصرف لبنان